Good afternoon, Mississippi Quilters. Terry Hartman here with the August edition of the America's 250 Years Sew Along. This month we are dedicating entirely to Mississippi because we are what? Mississippi Quilters. So I have 4 blocks for you this month. The first one is aptly titled Mississippi. The second one is Cornbread and Beans. The third one is Spools and Bobbins. And the fourth one is Pink Magnolias. So just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of history. We're going to talk about some of it, Mississippi and some of the other stuff that goes along. Mississippi was brought into the Union as the 20th state in 1817. And believe it or not, Natchez was actually the first state capital in 1870. They didn't move the state capital to Jackson until 1822. And the early colonization of Mississippi was done by the French. So the French were first, then it went to the Spanish, and then it went to the British. So we have a lot of different influences that go along with it. Now, one of the things that y'all know is that Mississippi was home to several tribes of Indians. Most of the space that was occupied was by the Choctaw and the Chickasaw Indians. And those two Indian tribes were they were recognized as part of the first civilized tribes of the Southeast. And if you've ever seen a map, and I don't have a map up with me, but the Choctaw Nation was quite large as far as the state was concerned. So they had quite a bit of land. But I didn't want to go in too much into a lot of that early stuff because, again, I don't want to talk about all the negative stuff that goes along with Mississippi. But in 1860, Mississippi was the largest producer of cotton in the world, which is striking if you think about it. Barks root beer was actually invented in Biloxi, Mississippi in 1898, and Coca-Cola was first bottled in Vicksburg in 1894. So there's some firsts along the way that we've had. What is probably one of the biggest things, and Morgan is one of the ones that kind of brought it to my attention, is Mississippi is a home of the blues. And it became a rich center for jazz and the Delta blues. And the Library of Congress felt so strongly that the Mississippi blues and the people that were producing it were so important that they actually sent an envoy down, and the envoy was John Lomax and his son Allen. And they were tasked with recording Mississippi blues from around the state. What I thought was interesting was they actually went to Parchment and actually recorded the prisoners and their, I guess you would want to call it, their chants that they had. So they actually felt so strongly that everybody in Mississippi, they all had a little bit of, what I want to call it, they all kind of helped grow it. And so even the prisoners in Parchment helped grow the blues. And so what I thought was really neat was most of the tracks that they recorded were from Muddy Waters, and we've all heard of Muddy Waters. But what was really interesting to me was Muddy Waters, Bo Diddley, and B.B. King all grew up on plantations, which, again, that is incredible to me. I mean, that is part of our history. It goes way, way back, but it was still around in that time frame. So we're going to talk about the blues a little bit later when we have a couple of blocks that we're going to do a little bit later that are kind of neat. So we'll talk about that again. One of the things I guess I want to say, the mid-1800s in Mississippi was illiteracy was extremely high, especially adult illiteracy. And so couple of people decided that they were going to tackle that problem. And we've all heard of Vardaman sweet potatoes. So Mr. Vardaman and then the governor at the time, his name was Bilbo, they decided to take on that project and try and to eliminate adult illiteracy. And they developed a lot of different programs to help adults, but they also developed a lot of school programs to ensure that the kids that were coming out of the schools were not going to be illiterate when they grew up, which I think is tremendous if you think about it, because adult illiteracy is a very, very tough thing. And to try and pull out of that and become a viable person who can actually read and write says a whole lot for what they felt was very, very important at the time. One of the things that you may not know, and it has been in the news recently, is Mississippi actually went from number 49th in the country when it came to children's reading levels, and they are now in the top 10. That's been recorded here earlier this year in 2026, and that is via national assessments. So it's not like a claim. It is actually tested. And what's interesting is there are several states that have actually come to the state of Mississippi and said, how did you do it? We want to know how to fix ours. Georgia's one of them. Oklahoma is another. So again, kind of neat when you think, that it's Mississippi, and a lot of people say all kinds of things about Mississippi, but we are moving up, ladies and gentlemen. We are moving up. So, and another one of the first that people really may not know about is the first lung transplant actually happened in Jackson, Mississippi in 1963. So we have a lot of history here in the state of Mississippi. There's a lot going on, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's go to our second block, cornbread and beans. Now, it's actually corn and beans, but cornbread and beans is just a staple when it comes to life. The block was first published by the Ladies Art Company. We've talked about the Ladies Art Company before, and it was published between 1890 and 1906. Now, we're not going to talk about the block so much. We'll talk about it in a minute because this is kind of a hard block. But what we're going to talk about is about cornbread and beans. Cornbread and beans, basically, it's a complete protein. Complete protein, low cost, shelf stable. Kind of important when it comes right down to it. It's actually, cornbread and beans is called the struggle meal. It's also called a poor man's supper. To give you an idea that it was absolutely critical to have cornbread and beans around during the Depression, because dried beans cost 3 cents a pound. And, at that point in time, money was super scarce. And so to have the ability to have a good protein that would stick on your ribs and provide a large amount of food at any given time was absolutely paramount. I'll tell you a story. So my husband and I got married. We hadn't been married very long, about 8 months, and I made cornbread and beans. Now, where I come from, cornbread and beans was a staple at least once a month in our house. Everyone loved cornbread and beans. He came home for dinner and he goes, "Do we not have any money?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, we're having cornbread and beans." I go, "Yeah?" And he goes, "Well, we only had cornbread and beans when we didn't have any money." And I go, "Really?" I said, "Because we had cornbread and beans once a month because we liked it." And then it ended up being one of his favorite meals that I ever cooked for him. So that was just a cute story that I never really thought about because, like I said, it was something that we grew up with, so it didn't really bother me. Neat thing though. Cornbread and beans is a traditional meal that they serve at NASA after a successful shuttle launch. It has been a traditional meal for all of the launch teams since 1981, and it still is going on today. So I think that is kind of neat. Another thing is there's actually a song out there about cornbread and beans, and it was done by Louis Jordan and his timpani, a group of 5 guys. And the song's called Cornbread and Beans, and it was published in 1949 by Decca Records. And it's I haven't listened to it yet, but it's a jump blues rendition, which I'll have to go and find out what that is. So there's actually a song about cornbread and beans, which I think is kind of neat. Now our third block is spools and bobbins. It's just a traditional quilt block. You can't talk about Mississippi and you can't talk about Mississippi quilters unless you throw something like this in. So it's a fairly easy block to do. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The last one is pink magnolias. Now, pink magnolias come up with the block, and that block, it was first called the Magnolia Bud block, and it was designed by Evelyn Foland in the 1930s. And in 1936, Nancy Cabot, we've talked about Nancy before, she changed it to the pink magnolia in 1936. Now, the magnolia was chosen unofficially as the state flower in 1900. It was chosen by school children. school children actually took a vote and across the state, and they voted for the magnolia to be the state flower. To give you an idea of the swing on the voting, was the magnolia got 12,745 votes, the cotton blossom got 4,171, and the Cape jasmine got 2,484 votes. So school children actually are the ones that picked out the state flower. The legislature made it official in 1952. It became both the state flower and the state tree. Another thing you guys might not know is a lot of the magnolia trees in Mississippi are protected. So if you want to do anything to a magnolia tree, you got to go ask your local government. I did not know that until I read it, and I was like, that makes sense. So, but what I really want to talk about, I found some really, really cool information that you guys might not know. The magnolia is actually one of the oldest surviving families of flowering plants on Earth. There are fossils that date back to 95 to 100 years ago, during the Cretaceous period. I probably pronounced it wrong. To give you an idea though, you have to think about it like this. Magnolias were blooming when dinosaurs walked the earth, which is incredible. So I thought that was kind of neat. Another thing that a lot of people don't know is the prehistoric pollinators were actually beetles. They were not bees. Bees were not around at that time. So they were beetles, and the magnolia evolved to the point to where its stamen became tough and its leaves became waxy so that the beetles couldn't chew them. So it actually made sure that it would be around past when the pollinators would actually get a hold of it, which I thought was pretty neat. To kind of tie it all together, Mississippi's got a hugely rich history. Yes, we have had some turbulent times in this state, but we are coming out on the other side. We've got lots of industry coming in. We got lots of innovation. We have a lot of aerospace learning that is happening in the state. And I just think that we need to take a step back and kind of look at that, because I think it's important that we recognize how far we've come. Now, we as quilters, we've done our part. We make sure that we are honoring our predecessors by what we're doing and our efforts to keep quilting alive. So just kind of wanted to highlight some things that are kind of indicative to Mississippi. So that's where we're going with all this. Now let's talk about the blocks. This one is super easy, Mississippi. So that one, now I will tell you, I did this block earlier and I used this dark blue in the corners, and I was just like, no. So I had to redo it. So I redid that one. Now this one, this is one of those, follow the directions. Follow the directions, because the directions tell you how to put it together, because it is not as easy as it looks. But once you get to going on it and you figure out, oh yeah, I do this, I do this, I do this, then it becomes super easy. So that is corn and beans. This one is spools and bobbins. So spools and bobbins, I did this the first time the hard way, very hard way, and it ended up being too small. And so then I looked at it again, and I looked at how I had it colored, and I colored it a little bit differently. And then I realized, gee whiz, it's nothing but half square triangles and little blocks. So this is like a half square triangle block, quarter. So that's all it is. And so then it became super, super easy. And I'm like, what happened? Sometimes I make this harder than it needs to be. And then the last block, so I decided on this block, because of the angles, that we're going to paper piece a lot of it. So this part right here is paper pieced, and these are paper pieced all the way around. So what I will, and then when I did the 6-inch, I've learned my lessons. I'm not ever doing a large pattern like this as a 6-inch block, because this would have been like the size of a pencil head. I'm not doing that. So I took 1/4 of it, and then I put some borders on it to make it 6 inches. Now, what I will say is, it is very important that you pay attention to where these colors are, because it matters when you put it together. And all the templates will be in there, just so you have it. And there was one other thing. So these actually end up being, this is a 3/4 of an inch unfinished, so this ends up being less than a 1/2 inch when you get done with it. So yeah, it is small, but it ended up working out pretty easily. So, but just take your time and go with it from there. That is the 6-inch ones. Believe it or not, they are pretty easy to do. But we'll just continue with what we're going for. So now next month we're coming up on our panel project, and hopefully, got my fingers crossed, you'll get to see the demos for that at the gathering, which is, in less than 2 weeks. So the gathering's coming up. We're gonna try and highlight those 2 particular panel quilts for you, and then keep an eye out on social media. We've got a few days left on registration. By the time you guys see this, it'll be over, but we are definitely moving forward, and we've got a lot of people coming. We've got 4 vendors coming, and we've got a great speaker for the gathering, and she's looking forward to coming. We're looking forward to having her. And just get out there on our social media, post your progress. I know a few of you have posted several months in a row, which is awesome, and I look forward to what we're going to do in September. We're actually getting to the point to where it's really starting to move through history now, and we're kind of tying it all together, and we'll see how it comes out at the end of the year. You guys have a great day, and I will see you in a little less than 2 weeks. Bye-bye.